At the same time that President Lincoln issued his call for 75,000 militia, he made plans for a special session of Congress. That proclamation, also issued on Monday, April 15th, set the day for the conclave as July the 4th. Why wait 90 days in a state of national emergency? Some angry lawmakers demanded. They received no official explanation from the White House. A few governors wired their acceptance of troop quotas within hours, but almost as promptly, North Carolina and Kentucky notified the chief executive that his order would not be obeyed. Virginia took the same course on Tuesday during the hours when North Carolina troops seized two unmanned federal installations. Protesting what he termed plans to subjugate the southern states, Governor John Letcher of Virginia solemnly warned that his state would never provide fighting men for any such use or purpose as envisioned. Wednesday saw refusals from Missouri and Tennessee. The same day, a special Virginia convention voted to present the secession issue to the people in a May referendum. Jefferson Davis publicly invited applications for letters of marque, which would permit privateering on the high seas. On Thursday, members of the 6th Massachusetts staged a triumphal march in New York City, and 5 companies of Pennsylvania troops reached Baltimore on their way to Washington. Mayor George W. Brown of Baltimore protested the use of his city as a staging ground for war, while secessionists who had held a series of public rallies boasted that they were in control of the city. Friday, April 19th, brought a presidential proclamation declaring a federal blockade of ports in seceded states. Soon it was extended to Virginia and North Carolina, still in the Union. The arrival from New York of the 6th Massachusetts into Baltimore that afternoon, a full week after the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, brought out angry citizens en masse. "Welcome to Southern graves," they shouted to men who had responded to Lincoln's call. Along Pratt Street, which carried the only railroad linking Philadelphia with Washington, cobblestones had been dug up during the night and placed in neat piles. 2,000 men of the 6th Massachusetts piled out of their train at the President Street station and tried to crowd into horse-drawn cars for the 4-block transfer to Washington Station. 500 jeering men surrounded the horse cars. Before they were filled, the crowd had swelled to 2,000. 8 cars made the trip to Washington Station with no incident more serious than the throwing of a few stones and bricks by civilians who shouted "Jeff Davis and the Confederacy forever." But as the 9th horse car set out for Washington Station, a hail of stones smashed every window. Someone shouted, "Tear up the track." Not having tools for this job, members of the mob seized heavy anchors and used them to block the track. Massachusetts men left their cars, formed ranks on the sidewalk, and prepared to march to their station. Civilians hit several men with stones, seized their muskets, and fired them into the air. Captain A.S. Follansbee of Lowell, Massachusetts, ordered his men, "Cap your pieces." Already loaded, the weapons thus were ready to be fired. By now the mob had grown to 10,000. A section of iron girder thrown from an upper window knocked the breath from a soldier. us with some of our own muskets. Chaplain John W. Hanson, who doubled as regimental historian, gave a slightly different account of the clash. Pistols and guns were fired from windows and doors of stores and houses as we passed along Pratt Street, he wrote. Getting a little accustomed to these strange circumstances, our boys loaded their guns as they marched. Whenever they saw a hostile demonstration, they took good aim as they could and fired. Some of the rioters fought like madmen. One of our boys took dead aim at a rioter, but his musket did not fire. Rioters then rushed forward, seized his musket, and plunged the bayonet through his shoulder. Marching on the double, our men fired again and again as rapidly as they could reload their pieces. As best the casualty list could be put together, it appeared that 3 soldiers were dead and at least 9 were injured. Baltimore merchant Robert T. Davis was dead. So were at least 8 other civilians. Several dozen civilians were seriously wounded. Many of them were not expected to live. At Fort Sumter, the only bloodshed had been the result of an accidental explosion during surrender ceremonies. In Baltimore, the deliberate attack upon some federal forces, followed by their retaliation, brought bloodshed